গৌরবিহিত কীর্তন শুনি আনন্দের হৃদয় নাচে। গৌরবিহিত কীর্তন শুনি আনন্দের হৃদয় নাচে। শুদ্ধ ভকত চরণ রেণু ভজনয় অনুকূল। যুগল মূর্তি দেখিয়া মোর পরম আনন্দ হয়। প্রসাদ সেবা করিতে হয় সকল প্রপঞ্চ জয়। যেদিন গৃহে ভজন দেখি গৃহেতে গোলক ভাই। যেদিন গৃহে ভজন দেখি গৃহেতে গোলক ভাই। চরণ সিধু দেখিয়া গঙ্গা সুখ না সীমা পায়। চরণ সিধু দেখিয়া গঙ্গা সুখ না সীমা পায়। তুলসী দেখি জুড়ায় প্রাণ মাধব তো শনি জানি। তুলসী দেখি জুড়ায় প্রাণ Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanvat Pranam.
Jai. Pranams to all the Vaishnavas.
Pranams, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I'll give an intro about you to all the present assembled devotees, and then I'll hand it over to you back.
Okay. So do you start recording at a certain time, or when the introduction starts, that's when you begin, or are we already live? How do you work it?
Yes, Prabhuji, it is already live, and it goes live on YouTube, and also we are recording on Zoom, and side by side simultaneously we are having Hindi translations on BCS Hindi page on Facebook.
Okay. And then when it's time for questions, will
Um,
someone coordinate those, or how will that work?
Yes, Prajit, I'll be present there for the questions. And
Okay.
like probably around after 40 minutes, we will start getting questions. And
Okay.
in between, we also drop a message to all the devotees. If they have any questions, they can post on the chat, or they can also raise their hand if they want to ask the question personally.
Okay. Okay. So then, will I call on them, or you will call on them, or how will that work? Just so I know
Uh,
what's your
uh,
standard.
Proji, if it is like whatever is comfortable for you, like generally they post the question on the chat, so I
Okay.
can also read it out to you, and you can answer. Or else, like if you wish to read it directly, then if it is comfortable for you, that is also okay.
We can try both.
Okay, okay, Proji.
I have the chat box open, so I'll look at those things. I
Yeah,
probably
I'll
won't.
read out the question. I'll read out.
Yeah, and we'll probably, maybe I'll speak for a little bit and then we'll open for questions after that. Is that okay?
Sure, sure, Proji.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm here to serve whenever you want to begin.
Yes, Prajit. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we have with us His Grace Anuttama Prabhu. I'm sharing Prabhuji's intro on the screen share, and as well as I'll be reading out as well. As a college student in political science and social science at Michigan State University and the University of Michigan, USA, Anuttama Prabhu began to search for answers to the most important questions in life. After exploring varied spiritual tradition, ranging from Zen Buddhism to Methodism, he decided to pledge himself to a life of serious spiritual practice and entered the ISKCON ashram in Denver, Colorado in 1975. Remaining at first a skeptic, Anuttama Prabhu vowed after his first night at the temple that he would not return to the previous lifestyle. He would found unfulfilling and would only leave the ashram if he found a better path to God. Anuttama Prabhu was formally initiated into the Vaishnava order by ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, India in 1976 and has remained committed to the discipline of Bhakti Yoga ever since. Anuttama Prabhu soon became leader of the men's ashram community in Denver and he became president of the Denver temple in 1983. Under his supervision, Hare Krishna Food for Life was established in Denver and was distributing 10,000 free meals to the needy and homeless each month. ISKCON Colorado hosted the expansive annual festival of India, and the temple participated in major Denver events such as the St. Patrick's Day Parade with an entry of a locally built traditional 40 feet high Rath Yatra cart. Anuttama Prabhu also oversaw the opening of Govinda's buffet, which offered sanctified vegetarian food to congregational members, neighbors, and officials from nearby local government and hospital offices. Anuttama Prabhu joined the ISKCON Governing Body Commission (GBC) in 2000 and served as its chairman in 2014-2015. Today, his zonal assignments include Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Illinois, Missouri, and co-host in West Virginia and Eastern Pennsylvania. He enacts his leadership goals globally by teaching seminars, including ISKCON's leadership and management, ISKCON communications course, the Guru seminar, and the ISKCON disciples course, all of which he helped co-authors with teams of other senior Vaishnavas. Besides his GBC duties, Anuttama Prabhu has served as ISKCON's International Director of Communications for 20 years. He is regular contributor and senior editor for ISKCON News and has authored articles for the ISKCON Communication Journal and several interfaith publications outside of ISKCON. Anuttama Prabhu has been interviewed by multiple media outlets, including BBC, Fox News, ABC, Larry King Live, and the Washington Post. Anuttama Prabhu is active in several religious freedom initiatives and leads ISKCON in networking with government and non-government organizations in Washington, D.C., as well as interfacing with the United Nations in New York. Anuttama Prabhu is also a board member of the Religion Communicators Council and Religions for Peace USA, as well as an advisor to the Religious Freedom Institute. He also co-founded the annual Vaishnava Christian Dialogues USA and India and Vaishnava Muslim Dialogue USA. Anuttama Prabhu and his wife Rukmini Devidasi live in Silver Spring, Maryland, near their son Gaurvani, daughter-in-law Brinda, and 3 grandchildren. They attend the local ISKCON temple in Potomac, Maryland. ISKCON and the Vaishnava tradition have great gifts to share. I have faith that as ISKCON devotees become more and more qualified to follow and represent Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great culture of bhakti that they brought to the world will have many tangible and long-lasting positive effects. Anuttama Prabhu. His Grace Anuttama Prabhu ki Jai. So
I,
Anuttama Prabhu, I hand it over to you. And we
okay, thank
welcome,
you.
by our traditional way by chanting one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, raising our hands. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. I want to begin by thanking you and the other devotees who helped organize this event. I know you have ongoing courses in Sangha on a regular basis, which is very important, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I didn't know you were going to read such a lengthy introduction. I'm embarrassed by that, and now I'm down to 35 minutes. So I should have found out ahead of time. I would have given you 2 lines to save time, so I could not have you all bored with that lengthy explanation. But I appreciate you reading that as well. So I was actually thinking of reading a verse from the Bhagavatam. I like to do that anytime I have a meeting with devotees to start out. And the verse that came to my mind is a very famous one. It is from the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, text 43, which you may recall is the particular verse that Prabhupada actually dedicated this whole volume. This is kind of the theme of the introductory verse in the very beginning of the book, taken from this text 43, chapter 3. So I'll read the Sanskrit and then the translation and part of the purport, if that's okay. Krishne sva dharmo pagate dharma jnana dibi saha kalo nashta drisham esha purararko duno ditaha. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. And it's a long purport, so I'll read maybe about half of it. So starting a little bit down from the very beginning, Prabhupada writes, except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. But real religion means to know God, our relationship with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving the material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals, engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel or Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual life or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego, but they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers. Very beautiful word connotation. They're like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men and women in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. The Bhagavatam is the preliminary study, Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the sunam bonum of life, Lord Sri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representative of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Lord Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. Om Gyanatamyandasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshru Umanitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So again, want to thank you for the opportunity to be with everybody and to share some thoughts, and we'll open for some questions a little later on. So as we're hearing in many places, and this verse I think draws particular interesting emphasis to this fact, our tradition, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the Vaishnava tradition general, ISKCON, we're very much based on this principle of hearing. Just like here, it's glorifying the process of hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada uses this term oral reception, giving reception, through the ears. It's like you receive somebody to your house through a doorway. So we receive spiritual knowledge, spiritual association through the ears, through the earway. And in the first canto, mentioned briefly, but early and more expansive way, it explains about how this age of Kali is the most difficult age. People describe we're quarrelsome, we're misguided, we're unlucky, we're short-lived. It's kind of like, they say that, you get you have a drawing of straws, you get the short straw. So being in Kali Yuga has got a lot of disadvantages. People are very disqualified for spiritual life in particular. And as we see all around us, it's such an age of strife. There's so much political conflict, and where I live in America these days, there's like, ethnic conflict and racial conflict, and just so much sectarianism is there. So the sages in Naimisharanya, they understood this is what's coming. And the example is given oftentimes, different parts of the world, we have different natural disasters. I know, say in Mayapur, they have flooding. And some parts where I live in America, they have tornadoes, or places further south, they have hurricanes. And when they know there's a hurricane coming, you can't stop it. It's way beyond our ability to stop a hurricane, but you can do some things to prepare for it and to minimize the damage. So people that go out to the store, a lot of times they have it in the garage because they have to get it out on a regular basis, and they have big plywood boards, 8 by 5 foot sheets of wood, and they nail them up to the windows, and they get everything they can blow away, they put it inside, and they prepare themselves for the hurricane to try to minimize the effects. So in the same way, the sages in Naimishranya, they were anticipating, this is the beginning of Kali Yuga. This is a really difficult time. There is a vicious storm coming and we can't stop it. But what can we do to try to minimize its effects, the negative effects, and maximize the opportunities that are still there in the human form of life? So particularly they're asking, where in this age of Kali can we find shelter? Where is there spiritual shelter, especially now that Krishna is gone? As it says, it has arisen, this Bhagavad Purana has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision, describe the purport, that's everybody. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance, such beautiful poetic language, the dense darkness of ignorance, in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So this is the answer to this question. Where do we find shelter in this age? Where do we find shelter now that Krishna has left? And the answer is given through this Bhagavad Purana. And then again in the purport, Prabhupada emphasizes this point. Prior to his departure from the material world, Krishna empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the message of the Bhagavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. So when Krishna was here, he was speaking the Gita, he was reestablishing religious principles and minimizing all the demoniac elements that were there, killing so many demons and establishing Yudhisthira as the emperor again, overcoming Duryodhana and his evil rule. So it's stressed here, when Krishna is not here, we get light through the Bhagavatam, through the Bhagavad Gita. How? By hearing. So we're connected to Krishna by hearing and by taking shelter of these transcendental sound vibrations. In a similar way, flash forward to more recent times, we also connect to Lord Chaitanya. None of us alive here in the world. There may be some saints someplace in the Himalayas that at least I certainly haven't contacted that were there when Lord Chaitanya was present. There's probably some illustrious personalities, but generally most of us, we have no direct contact with Lord Chaitanya, but we have the contact through the parampara and through the process of hearing. We can hear Lord Chaitanya's instructions. We can apply Lord Chaitanya's instructions. We can hear about his pastimes and his Leela, and we can hear the histories that were written by his followers to keep his instructions and his presence alive. In the same way, just 40 some years ago, Srila Prabhupada physically departed from this world. But we, following the same principle, spiritual principle, we still, all of us, we connect with Srila Prabhupada. We are connected and we regularly reconnect and re-strengthen that connection. How? By oral reception, by hearing from the Bhagavatam, and particularly in the context of Prabhupada, by hearing his purports, we're directly hearing from Srila Prabhupada. We can hear Prabhupada's lectures. We can read Prabhupada's letters. We can read Prabhupada's conversations. And I often tell devotees this because there's a sense that, oh, those of you that were here physically, you were live when Prabhupada was physically present and you had so much association, and we're not so fortunate today. But actually, if we believe this principle of the importance of hearing and associating through hearing, and that hearing is the torch bearers for all of us in our blind condition, frankly, there's so much more opportunity to associate with Prabhupada today than there was when Prabhupada was physically present. Because Prabhupada was traveling all the time. Of course, we know once he came to the West, it was only about 11 years of his time here. But he'd spend maybe a few days in a city, or occasionally, sometimes longer, maybe a month or so in some special places. He spent longer in Los Angeles and Hawaii, I think, and perhaps in Mayapur, a few places. But generally just a few days. So devotees that live there, they'd have Prabhupada's association for a few hours, a few classes, and even then maybe he'd get Bhagavatam class and then he'd go up to his room with just a few people. They weren't all there hearing everything, but today we can go back and we can listen to that lecture. whenever it was, say some morning in 1973, then you can read the conversations books that he was having at 11 o'clock that morning and 7 o'clock that night. You can read the letters that he wrote during the afternoon. You can hear the evening class. So there's much, much more opportunity for connecting with Srila Prabhupada through the hearing process than there was for those of us that were here. I came a little later, but during the couple of years I was in ISKCON and Prabhupada was physically present. Technically, not even technically, there was much, much less opportunity for connection. And I give the example myself. I was initiated by Srila Prabhupada, so I'm Srila Prabhupada's a direct disciple, but I only was with him one time. In 1976, by Krishna's grace, I was able to go to India. My home temple was in the United States. I was able to go to India and attend what we called then the Vrindavan Mayapur Festival. And actually, I think Mayapur, that year was a Mayapur Vrindavan Festival. Went to Mayapur for a couple of weeks, and then everybody went to Vrindavan. And so I was able to hear Prabhupada give a Bhagavatam class for a series of mornings. That was it. That was my full association with Prabhupada. And I had one conversation with him, only one. And that conversation was, what vows are you taking? At my initiation, what vows are you taking? And I told him the 4 regular principles, and I told Prabhupada I'm going to chant 16 rounds, and he gave me my name, Anuttama Das. That was my one face-to-face conversation. But still, for the next 40 plus years of my life, I have tried to connect very deeply with Prabhupada through hearing, through understanding his instructions, through reading the Bhagavatam, reading the Gita, and putting those things I've learned into my life. So I think I'm a little bit of an example of the potential and the power that comes to this hearing. Because if you just say, okay, well, how much time did I have with Prabhupada, and was that sufficient to keep me going? I would say probably not, definitely not. But because I'm hearing every single day from Prabhupada, and because I'm also associating with his devotees, I'm associated with his movement, I'm understanding more and more about his mission, that connection grows stronger. And I wanted to mention this because I think most of the people listening are Bhakti Charu Maharaj disciples, or people who see him as one of their mentors, which I also see Bhakti Charu Maharaj in that way. I think it's the same way now that Bhakti Charu Maharaj's physical presence is not here. Following in this verse of the Bhagavatam, which is explaining how do we associate with Krishna, how do we associate with Lord Chaitanya, how do we associate with Srila Prabhupada? So in the same way now, we continue to associate with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. We continue to take shelter of him, and we're continued to be connected with him through this process of hearing. By hearing the Bhagavatam, by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, by hearing Srila Prabhupada's other instructions, by hearing Bhakti Charu Maharaj's lectures, just like before this talk started, we're all listening to the beautiful bhajan from Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and there's so many that were recorded. He is such a beautiful voice and singer and devotee, able to glorify the Lord so wonderfully. It's very inspiring. So in this way, we continue to be connected and inspired. So we connect to Guru through hearing. We connect to our founder Acharya through hearing. We connect to Lord Chaitanya through hearing. We connect to Krishna by hearing. And by doing that, we're fully protected and we can be inspired. And again, I think just, put it on a really human level. I was initiated in my first initiation in April 1976. I became a devotee, or moved into the temple to start the process of becoming a devotee. In August of 1975, got initiated in India in 1976. Took a second initiation in Denver, also April 1977. And then Prabhupada left this world in November 1977. So from 75 until 77, about 2 years was the full time that I was here, active as a devotee while Prabhupada was here. It's a pretty short period of time in terms of my lifetime. but you know, and I'm not a particularly advanced devotee by any means, and certainly have so many flaws and so many things I need to overcome from my material conditioning. But I very much feel Srila Prabhupada's presence, and I feel my connection with Srila Prabhupada, and I actually feel it can grow every day. If I apply myself, I feel Prabhupada's presence even more. When I read, just like lately, I've been rereading the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, which I probably read it 8 or 10 times, and I'm reading again. I picked up volume 1 about Prabhupada's lifetime before he came to the West. I finished that volume and I went back and I read it again a second time, just immediately afterwards. So I read it kind of the whole thing through, and then a second time through to really focus. And I picked up so many more details that I hadn't remembered. I didn't even remember the first time through again this time. What to speak when I first read it 30 years ago. And now I'm reading volume 2 for the second time. And then I go on to volume 3. By that connection, my personal experiences, my connection, my appreciation, my faith in Srila Prabhupada increases. And physically speaking, he's been gone since 1977. That's 42 years ago. But by hearing about him, and my relationship with him deepens. So we should all try and understand this isn't just something, I know like there's some people that say when someone, you know, passes away, oh, he lives on in the memories of his followers or family. But then, you know, those people pass away and then, okay, it's over. So I you know, I don't remember my great-great-grandfather or my great-grandfather. So are they gone? Well, physically, yes, but spiritually, their impact was nil. But it's completely different from that with our spiritual leaders and our gurus and our spiritual authorities, that through their instructions, through their example, that lives on. It totally lives on. And again, I used myself as a humble example of that. Not a very good example, but I think a human one to show even flawed people like me get the mercy of that kind of connection. A couple other things. I was just asked to share some of my memories with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, which is always a pleasure to do. He was it was so joyful whenever having his association. Maharaj and I worked together, served together for about 20 some years on the GBC. I became a member around 1999. We worked on a lot of different projects together. We're also the last few years on the Mayapur Executive Board, the MEB. And my remembrance of Maharaj and the spirit I will always carry forward is how Bhakti Charu Maharaj embodied Prabhupada's instructions that my disciples are perfect gentlemen. Maharaj was, and you've all heard this again and again, but it's worth repeating and again and again and again. Maharaj really was such a perfect gentleman. And I think as, again, followers, friends, disciples, people that look up to him as an example, we should all remember that appreciating someone's qualities is the beginning. Following in their footsteps is the next most important step. For instance, if Srila Prabhupada gave me some instruction and I remember, oh yes, Prabhupada gave me that instruction, isn't that nice? Someone can say, what are you doing with it? Well, I'm remembering that Prabhupada gave me that instruction, isn't that nice? Yeah, but Anuttama, what impact did it have on you? Well, I'm remembering that Prabhupada gave that instruction. So that's good to have that memory of Srila Prabhupada. But clearly what's better to say, yes, I remember that instruction that Prabhupada gave. And here's what I'm doing to apply it today. Or geez, it kind of slipped my mind. I realized maybe I slid a little downhill a little bit the last few weeks. I haven't actually done that, or some strenuous, difficult situation came up this morning or yesterday. And gosh, I didn't live up to that example and that standard, but I'm going to try again. So I think when we talk about Bhakti Charu Maharaj being a perfect gentleman, then we all, if we have heard that, that means, okay, how is that affecting me today in my life? Am I being more kind and courteous to my wife? Because the example of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Am I being more patient with my children? Because I'm trying to aspire to follow in Bhakti Charu Maharaj's footsteps? Am I more understanding of other people's shortcomings because of Bhakti Charu Maharaj's example? And I think that's critical for us to understand. One of the things when our spiritual masters, our spiritual leaders physically leave this world, there's a grieving. In addition to that, it's growing. It's a time of grieving and it's a time of growing, because it's a time for serious followers to say, okay, how do I need to now grow in caring for the mission of my mentor, my spiritual master, my authority? I think that was a critical thing when Srila Prabhupada left this world. Most disciples stepped up. Okay, Prabhupada's not physically here. Now we have to try to carry it on as very, very, very humble servants of Srila Prabhupada. And as he said, cooperating, not turning into chicken mentality. What's the pecking order? You know, that's one of the first challenges that come. Everybody starts saying, oh, I had more association with Guru Maharaj than you did. Well, I was ahead of this project. That one's more dear to Guru Maharaj than this one is. Oh, Guru Maharaj once told me that he really thinks I should do this and this and this, and that means he thinks I'm special. Don't say those things. Don't think those things. Don't hear those things. What we should say, what we should hear, what we should think is, I'm a humble, small part, a servant of my Guru Maharaj and his Guru Maharaj and the whole parampara. And how can I serve others in a way to help move Prabhupada's mission forward? So Maharaj so much personified that. Practically, he was not just a perfect gentleman. He really, in one sense, was the personification of ISKCON consciousness. He was so dedicated to ISKCON, so dedicated to his godbrothers, so dedicated, of course, to Srila Prabhupada, so dedicated to the GBC in so many ways. And that's why I think we oftentimes hear people say what a peacemaker he was. It's something I also noticed. Bhakti Charu Maharaj was a wonderful peacemaker, because he was very concerned to see the family shouldn't quarrel. Because if there's quarrels between the family members, then can lead to some real dissension. It can lead to division. We know the whole world in this age of Kali is full of divisiveness. Again, I'm born in America, watching what's going on where I live. It's frightening and very disturbing. And we have to be very careful to not let that happen. And there's a tendency for it to happen. And there's pushes towards that all the time within Prabhupada's movement. So I work with Maharaj in a lot of different projects. We developed the disciple course together. For what reason? To strengthen ISKCON. Because if disciples understand their relationship with Prabhupada, first and foremost, as the founder Acharya, then we have relationships with our Siksha gurus, which are also very sacred. Then we have a relationship with, we have different ones. We're all individuals. Some of us have a Diksha guru here. Some of us have a Diksha guru here. Some of a Diksha guru there. But because of our connection to the founder Acharya and to ISKCON, and of course, ultimately the Parampara and Krishna, we're all connected. So Maharaj is very enthusiastic to help put that course together. And then the Guru Seminar that based on the same principles, helping empower those that serve as gurus, how they also can remember, I'm first and foremost a servant. If you're a guru, it doesn't mean you're the master. It means you've realized more than others that you're the servant. So cooperating with ISKCON, cooperating with the GBC, with our God brothers, God sisters, etc., is essential. And Maharaj also, he and I worked together in the Joy of Devotion film. Any of you that haven't seen that film, please do. And please watch it, understanding that it was in large part the mercy and the effort of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj to make that film come about. It's a very beautiful, inspiring film. It was produced in the year of 2016, the 50th anniversary. So please take time to watch that film. And if you know people that haven't watched it, or if in your temple hasn't made an effort to show it to devotees, it's free now. That we're asking some subscription free, originally the first 3 years to help cover some of the costs, but that's done now. And just a couple final thoughts specifically regarding His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And again, I was thinking this morning, I've been in a lot of these conversations, remembering, thinking about, glorifying, appreciating Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And I was thinking, actually, it's something that should never stop. As we don't stop glorifying Krishna. We don't stop glorifying, appreciating Srila Prabhupada. And we should never think there reaches a point that it's not appropriate to remember and to glorify and to rededicate ourselves to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who was the emblem of being dedicated to ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada. So that's the biggest impression I'm left with when I think about Bhakti Charu Maharaj, is his gentlemanness and his loyalty to Prabhupada and to ISKCON. He truly was the personification of an ISKCON man. And some of you may have seen there was a recent video, short video produced by the Communications Ministry about Vaishnavi Diksha gurus. And in that, Maharaj, he makes some very strong points about how ISKCON is Prabhupada's ashram. And outside of ISKCON, most organizations in India, there's a guru who's there for a certain time and he passes the ashram on to the disciple who then becomes the acharya. And then he passes away, the next guru becomes the acharya. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj is making this point that that's not ISKCON. Prabhupada is the founder acharya. It's always going to be Prabhupada's ashrams. And if we keep Prabhupada in the center like that, then we'll always be very, very connected. And I just think it's wonderful, and I'll always be inspired by remembering Bhakti Charu Maharaj's instructions on that and trying to take that to heart myself. And again, we know the age of Kali Yuga fills our mind with reasons we shouldn't cooperate. So we may think, oh, I'm a very cooperative person, but not with her. She's just too much trouble. Or yeah, I understand. Prabhupada said we should cooperate. I'll cooperate, but not with those people. Those people are too difficult. And of course, we know, I'm talking about within the broader fold of ISKCON and Vaishnavas and like that. We have different relationships with outside people, and those too, we should try to cultivate good relationships. But especially within our ISKCON family, we should avoid this trickiness of the material energy that thinks, well, I like everybody except those ISKCON people, or I don't like those ISKCON people, or that's the challenge. Prabhupada said, if you love me, we all know, you cooperate together. It's easy to cooperate with the people we get along with well. The challenge is to cooperate with the people that maybe there's a little, friction there. And we all have people like that. We're all influenced by the modes of nature. None of us are pure devotees. And that's where we really have to say, okay, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, how did he do this? How was he so good at getting along so well with everyone? What were those qualities that I can emulate, that I can try to follow? What did Prabhupada mean when he said cooperating together with everyone? How can I try to do that? And we can remember, just as here, Krishna departed, but his presence is maintained by his arrangement. Prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Vyasadeva. So prior to Prabhupada's departure, he empowered his disciples, he empowered the GBC, he empowered the next generation of Vaishnavas. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj similarly is empowering us to carry on his mood and his service to Prabhupada. And Krishna's there, and Prabhupada's there, Bhakti Charu Maharaj is there. And through remembering that and keeping our spiritual focus, we can, despite the ups and downs, and there's always ups and downs in this material world, despite those ups and downs, we continue to cross the ocean of material existence and gradually awaken our love for Krishna. And then our life's perfect. So I'll stop there. I think it's been right about 35 minutes or so. If there's questions or comments, let's see, there's one up on the chat that's just kind of an appreciation. Would you say the benefits of chanting and hearing are subtle? That although we are making progress in our spiritual life through this process, we don't necessarily realize it and should therefore persevere. This is from Divya Radhika Devi Dasi. Yeah, that's very thoughtful. I remember as a newer devotee, my Bhakti leader gave a great example. Maybe it's something Prabhupada used in a lecture. I don't remember that clearly. But he explained that just like if you're in an airplane, most of us have flown in airplanes. If not, you can understand the example. If you fly in an airplane, sometimes it goes into a bank of clouds, and sometimes those clouds can last hours. So let's say you're in New York City and you're flying to Los Angeles and you take off and you enter clouds and there's a big storm all the way across the country. You don't see anything out the window but what looks like fog. And you go and go and go and go and go, and you wonder, are we going anywhere? Are we like still sitting on the runway? What's it? But actually, if you stay in the airplane because you're in the right place, you got an expert pilot, and you've made all the proper arrangements, you got the ticket to New York and not the ticket to London. You will, if you stay with the plane, or in this example, with the process of Krishna consciousness, by persevering, to use the word that Divya Radhika used. By persevering, we will be successful. Now, at the same time, we have to have little checks and balances how we're doing. Prabhupada writes the Gita, we should test ourselves. How are we doing in terms of developing the qualities of a Vaishnava? Those are very, very important. Not that we just think, okay, I'm practicing Krishna consciousness, but I don't have to make some endeavor to actually myself kind of take those qualities to heart. But say with our chanting, sometimes we may feel great progress and benefit from chanting. Sometimes we don't, but we still chant. Sometimes I know my own experience as books distributor the first 10 or so years of my service. Gosh, some days you go out and every single person you meet is like, oh, this is wonderful. I've been looking for this book, or no, I never heard of it, but it sounds wonderful. Or no, I don't think I'll take the book today, but here's $20. And other days you go out and it's like hitting your head against the wall. Every single person you meet is like, no, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. I don't like you people. And, sometimes verbally accosting you, or once in a while even physically accosting you, but you don't stop because it's transcendental activity. And by doing it for Krishna, success is guaranteed. And again, if you reread, if anybody here has not read Srila Prabhupada and Lilamrita, and there's a condensed volume, which is nice, but there's a 7-volume total. I deeply request and encourage all of you, read that book, because when you come back and see the kind of challenges Prabhupada faced again and again, year after year after year after year after year after year, and he never gave up. When we read that, at least, I think we'll all come away thinking like, whatever little obstacles I have, pretty easy to persevere compared to what Prabhupada faced. So thanks for that question. Let's see. Here's one from, can't see who it's from, SDD. I understand the more one advances, the more one can become humble. But in my case, I'm finding as more time passes, I'm getting more of a tendency to show off my knowledge. How can we serve in the proper mood? Well, first, thank you for being so honest in that. I mean, I would say that's evidence that you're actually becoming pretty humble. To be able to put up on a chat in front of a couple hundred people, gosh, I'm supposed to be humble, but I kind of feel I'm getting more, I'm getting more tendency to want to show off. That I feel is a wonderful example of what it means to be a Vaishnava. To come in front of each other and say, Prabhuji, I'm really having trouble with some humility. I feel so proud, and I notice I just have a tendency to want to show off my knowledge, or Mataji, or, sometimes I have difficulty with my anger, and I don't know what to do about it. Sometimes I get offensive. Just that mentality in itself is how we get corrected. Because if we're open to acknowledging, here's where I see some shortcomings, here's where I need to work on myself. And then, of course, the first step, pray to Krishna, pray to Prabhupada, pray to Guru, please help me. Krishna's in our heart, he hears those prayers. And then to seek the advice of other devotees. So specifically with your question, there's a difference between showing off your knowledge and engaging your knowledge. Showing off your knowledge is when you're sitting in a room with senior people and somebody asks a question and you blurt out what you think the answer is, despite the fact there's so many people of senior stature. That's showing off. Engaging your knowledge is when someone inquires from you, or maybe even a senior person in the room says, Prabhuji, can you answer this question? And you offer what you can in a humble mood to glorify Krishna. Or when you're one-on-one with someone and they ask you a question, and to the best you pray to Krishna, please Krishna, let me say the right thing to this person to help them advance in Krishna consciousness. And then you do the best you can. That's the way to engage it. And that's not becoming proud. That's not being proud. So I think those are some thoughts. How do we do it in the proper way? We do it as an offering to Krishna. You give whatever you can to share with others. And in the back of your mind, you always remember the fact is, if Krishna wants, I can forget everything I've learned tomorrow. I could be hit by a tree. I could be hit by a truck. I could just be, it happens sometimes. People become prematurely senile at the age of 50. They forget without Krishna, I don't remember anything. So if you have some knowledge, you remember it's by the grace of Krishna only. And please, Krishna, thank you. Let me use it for you. That way you'll always feel dependent and you won't struggle so much with this false pride. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. So I'm just going to kind of go down what I see here on the list. Where can we find the movie? It's called Joy of Devotion. And I know that you can definitely look on ISKCON News. No, not sure if everybody out there reads ISKCON News. The humble request, it's a service that a global team of devotees puts together for your benefit, help you keep in touch with what's going on around the world. You can look at iskonnews.org or news.iskon.org, or just Google in ISKCON News. When you go there, type in Joy of Devotion, and there's a couple stories about when the film was released and recently where you can find it to log in. And then if you represent in a temple, you can contact through the connections that are, you can contact our editor producer of Joy Devotion, who also is the editor of ISKCON News. And then she can get you like a high quality version if you want to play it in a screen. If temples haven't shown it, John Masmi is coming up, maybe put it online, or if you are having some people coming visiting your temples with masks and all those proper things, it's a beautiful thing to share there. Let's see. The top one whoever's controlling the chat box, I can't see the top one, I'm missing a line or two. Concerned about how Srila Prabhupada isn't the center of devotees' lives and wanted to do something about that. Can you explain why that may have been a thought in Gurudev's mind? And if that is the case, how to have that rectified? Whoever's controlling the chats, is there control? Maybe I guess I can. Can I control that? Let's see. Oh, yes. I've heard that Guru Maharaj has spoken about how he expressed concern about Srila Prabhupada isn't in the center of devotees' lives and wanted to do something about that. Can you explain why that may have been a thought in his mind and how it's to be rectified? It's a good question. It's actually a complicated question. First of all, keep in mind our default position, like a computer or something else has a default position. Our default position is what? I'm the center. I am the center, me and each of you. I am the center. We're all thinking I'm the center, and we're trying to get over that to the point of putting Krishna in the center. So within our communities, we carry a lot of this subtle baggage conditioning. I'm the center of my temple. I'm the center of the GBC. I'm the center of the disciples. Oh, Bhakti Charu Maharaj had so many disciples. I'm the center. I'm the best. It's all same illusion. I'm the center of my family. I'm the father. I'm the center. I'm the mother. I'm the center. I'm the eldest son. I'm the center. It's all Maya. Krishna's the center. So there's that tendency of forgetfulness that's there amongst all of us. There's a tendency to think, this is my ashram, and this is my movement in the sense that I'm the owner. It's my movement in the sense that I'm connected, but it's not my movement in the sense that I'm the controller. So one of the ways that Maya attacks us, and Prabhupada warned us against this, being careful about always working cooperatively, we can splinter off. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was reminding us to be very, very careful to not splinter off. And we saw that's happened in ISKCON's 50 plus years of history. And wonderfully, the vast majority of ISKCON devotees and the vast majority of ISKCON temples are still working together cooperatively. Doesn't mean we don't have disagreements from time to time. Doesn't mean sometimes it's hard to work cooperatively with each other, but we have been able to do that. So I think Bhakti Charu Maharaj, knowing the seriousness of this, and knowing also, the generation before, the Gaudiya Math, they had their difficulties of splintering, and it really minimized a lot of the work they would have been able to accomplish. I'm borrowing somebody else's office, so I don't know how to turn off this phone. So you're going to hear some ringing for 3 or 4 rings. Sorry for that. So those are my thoughts on that. Let's go down. Another question on cooperation. We understand that we have to cooperate, but how can we behave if we see that something's going on which is not in accordance with Srila Prabhupada, or at least in our opinion, our interpretation of Srila Prabhupada's teaching? So how do we cooperate if we see things are not going on properly? So that depends upon the nature of our relationship with where that's coming from. If I'm a temple president and I have responsibility and I see something not going on properly, it's my duty in an appropriate way, not to chastise someone for the sake of exerting my power, but to help educate them and correct them to understand what's the right way. If I'm a friend with someone or someone's in my family, that kind of relationship, then I can approach them in that mood as a peer, as a member of a loving family unit, or a god brother or a god sister, depending on the relationship. If someone's in a senior position, let's say I'm in a temple and I see like a department head is doing something that doesn't seem right to me, then I should approach the authorities in a humble mood. Prabhu, as far as I know, Prabhupada wanted things done like this. It looks to me like it's happening like that. And I wanted to bring it to attention to see if you can try to rectify it, or please inform me, help me better understand where I'm confused, because maybe I'm not seeing things properly. And in ISKCON, more and more, we're setting up systems. Prabhupada said first purpose to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. So gradually we're setting up systems, things like ISKCON Resolve is there. If there's conflicts or disagreements, how do we get that worked out? If there's ombuds, ideally within the next 5-10 years, every temple in ISKCON should have an ombuds person who is someone who is a senior Vaishnava, who's not directly in the line of management, but has the respect of those topmost leaders. Someone who we can approach anonymously and say, Prabhu or Mataji, that I have a concern. This seems to be a problem. And they can look into it. They can research it in a way that's appropriate without offending the other party. Perhaps just telling me, Anuttama, you're not really informed properly. That is an okay thing to do. Or Anuttama, I'll look into it, I'll take care of it. So we're gradually putting systems in place. But based on our relationship, we can humbly approach people. I've had situations myself where there were people senior to me that, people came and said, hey, there's an issue, you have to deal with this. And I approached that person in a humble mood as best I could, said, I'm hearing these complaints and I'm not really sure. And please help me understand what's going on. And sometimes they said, well, you haven't been given the proper information. This is what's going on and it's right. And I have to agree, it's right. Or other times it's, well, oh, geez, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I hadn't thought about it in that way. I will work on it. Or again, sometimes we don't have that relationship. You go to the authority and you ask them, can you please address this? Okay. That's my thoughts on that question. Let's see. Okay, I see one more on my screen. Maharaj had once said, by practicing Krishna consciousness, we expand our consciousness. I did not understand it and had thought I will ask him when I meet him next time. Well, you still can ask him that next time you meet him. But in the meantime, it's good what you're doing to ask a few other people that you're more physically connected with here. What does that mean that by practicing Krishna consciousness, we will expand our consciousness? Well, Prabhupada said many, many times, he gave the example of a child when we're first born. Our whole consciousness, our awareness is centered around the body. We want food. We get older, we suck our thumb or we suck our toe. It's all about me. And then Prabhupada explains how the child first becomes aware there's another person here, there's the mother. It's not just me. I'm not the mother. There's mother and there's the baby. And then there's a sense of, okay, there's the father, starts realizing their consciousness expands. And then there's brothers and then there's sisters. So they realize I'm part of a network here. Slowly, the child begins to understand. And then they get older and then they have friends and then they go to school and they get educated about the broader society and the country and the history. And that consciousness is meant, as Vaishnavas, we understand, that consciousness is meant to expand further and further and further until we actually understand our relationship with Krishna. And when we understand a relationship with God, then that consciousness or that awareness, then we see we're connected with everybody. Just like in America now, there's this conflict, Black Lives Matter, because of some, history of police brutality and mistreatment of African Americans. And some people are kind of responding, well, wait, white lives matter too. Well, yeah, of course, white lives matter too. And in this historical incident, there's an imbalance. So people are trying to get it more balanced by focusing on the fact that, hey, Black people haven't been treated so well. Let's lift that up. But if I expand my consciousness to only care about Black people, and I'm not caring about white people or brown people or green people, that may be a step in the right directions, but it needs to expand more and more. And Prabhupada talks about how people, sometimes they become humanitarians. That's an expanded consciousness. It's not just about me, it's about the whole human race. Well, that's great. But what about the animal species? What about the planet? What about the other planets? So Krishna consciousness means we're becoming aware that God, that the God is there. He's within everything. He's outside of everything. He's in that tree. You know, it's not that he is the tree, but he's in that tree. There's a soul there. He's also there. So I should treat that tree with respect. I don't cut the tree unnecessarily. That's Krishna consciousness. If I'm just self-conscious, the tree's in my way, chop it down. If I'm Krishna conscious, I respect that tree. I respect an ant, as Lord Chaitanya said. I respect every living being. So those are some thoughts on that. Let's see. Here's one from Chandan Paul. Some of us aspiring for Maharaj as Guru have not had any contact with his Vapu and are feeling a little lost. Any advice for us, Prabhu? And then second part is quicker. Is ISKCON News different from the ISKCON Connection? ISKCON Connection takes a lot of its information from ISKCON News. ISKCON News is a separate website that has video and audio and news writing and all those kind of things. It's been around for about 15 years. ISKCON Connection is an effort from the GBC office to, as the name is, to connect devotees. And they take a lot of stories, not everything, and they have other sources, but they take a lot of stories from ISKCON News. So I would encourage you to go to ISKCON News directly and you get a lot of information from there. And as I mentioned, also you can, once you go on the site, search for a Joy of Devotion film, you can find that. So back to the first part, which is a more philosophical one. Some of us aspiring for Maharaj as Guru. So I would understand these are devotees that have accepted Maharaj as a Siksha Guru, but did not formalize that as Diksha Guru, have not had any contact with his physical form and are feeling a little lost. Okay, that's a deep question. I think even the word lost is given in this verse we read here today. Yeah, it is. Those who are, yeah, it's right in this verse. Persons who have lost their vision, right? Feeling lost. When you have loss of relationship, loss of anything of value, loss of vision is critically important in human form life. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So we get light in a philosophical way by hearing. In a similar way, we know this explanation of Vapu and Vani. Vapu is sometimes there. I had, as I mentioned, 1 month of seeing Prabhupada for an hour and a half most mornings a week. He'd come down and give Bhagavatam class. That was it. And my initiation ceremony. Everything else has been based on Vani. So the Acharyas say repeatedly, Vani is always present and is more important than Vapu. If we have Vapu, we should take full advantage of that. But if we don't, we should focus on Vani. So we may feel a little lost because we don't have the Vapu, but there's so many ways to seek shelter of the Vani, and that's the instruction that's given. And I'm reading Leela Amrita again. Why? As I encourage all of you to, because that's the way I connect with the Vani. I hear about Srila Prabhupada. I learn about Srila Prabhupada. I hear that more of the teachings and how Prabhupada reacted in day-to-day situations that give insights that maybe even sometimes as purports don't directly help me understand certain things like that. So for feeling lost, and we all should feel lost, we're in this material world. We are lost and blind in the material world. Our only recourse is hearing and associating with the spiritually advanced devotees. So just like we're listening Bhakti Charu Maharaj, his bhajans are there, his lectures are there. And for those who are aspiring, I know there's a wonderful devotee in Washington, D.C., where I'm based, who was aspiring to get initiated by Bhakti Charu Maharaj and didn't have that Diksha connection before Maharaj's departure. And I was speaking with him the other day, and we were talking about how Bhakti Charu Maharaj's Vani and his Siksha relationship as his Siksha Guru will always be there. And at some point in time, if he feels comfortable, when he feels comfortable, he may choose to get Diksha and to formalize that with another representative of Srila Prabhupada in the Parampara. And that doesn't at all minimize his Siksha relationship with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And some devotees may decide sometimes, I've known devotees been members of ISKCON for, 20, 30, 40 years and never got formally took Diksha. It's advised we do so, but not doing so doesn't mean, like a Christian thing, you accept Jesus and you're saved. If you don't, you go to hell. It's not like that. It's about reawakening our connection with Krishna. And Siksha Guru helps us reawaken that connection with Krishna. And Diksha Guru helps us and formalizes that effort to reconnect with Krishna. So at this stage, anyone as this devotee, Buddha Dev and Washington, D.C. was encouraging, you take shelter of Maharaj and Maharaj's instructions, which are, as we said, connect with Prabhupada, give your life to Prabhupada's mission, serve the Vaishnavas here, go to Bhagavatam class, etc., go to the temple, take prasadam, worship the deities. All those activities, by that connection, we remain connected to Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And at some point, when we feel comfortable, then we can take Diksha from another one serving as Diksha Guru. And that will not minimize it. It actually will enhance your feeling of your connection with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Because he would have said, take Diksha when you're ready. So it's 11 o'clock. Is there time for a couple more questions? I'm not sure. Some of these, at least 11 o'clock my time, on the hour, I should say, maybe on the half hour, those of you that are in India. So it's been about an hour. Should we continue, Prabhu, who is behind the scenes here, or should we stop promptly after the 1 hour? I forgot to ask you ahead of time what the rules are for your program.
Prabhuji, if it is okay for you, we can continue.
Yeah, I can continue. For how much more time you say, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, we have like 15, 20, 30 minutes. No problem.
Okay. Okay, there's nice questions, so we can continue. Let's see if some more questions come up. Someone's just asking, what does Anuttama mean? It's in the Bhagavad Gita 2 places, and it's defined a little bit differently, but as I understand it, and I've heard Untitled Maharaj, who's a Sanskrit expert, explain it in yet another way, but that it means servant of Krishna who is the highest perfection or the topmost. So I'm the servant of Krishna. It's the name of Krishna. That means that the topmost destination. Okay. Now there's another question. Is it necessary to take second initiation? No, it's not necessary. In what context? This is from Vrajadevi Dasi. Is it necessary to take second initiation to awaken pure Krishna consciousness? No. Is it necessary to take second initiation to worship the deities? Yes. Is it necessary to take second initiation to chant the Gayatri mantra? Yes. And there's some other functions in ISKCON that's required to take second initiation. So second initiation, and Prabhupada had this second initiation for his disciples, specifically to worship the deities and to chant the Gayatri mantra. It further connects us, but it's not mandatory, but it's recommended, but it also shouldn't be done just whimsically. Shouldn't be like, well, I need to take second initiation because the Brahmins get more respected. That's that's not a good reason to take second initiation. But if there is an opportunity for us, if we've made a serious commitment, we want to take on additional responsibilities. We want to be able to worship the deities. We want to chant the Gayatri mantra. We want to try to help make more of a commitment to Prabhupada's movement. Then it's recommended, and I certainly would recommend people do so. Okay, Rajadevi, hope that's helpful. That's the end of questions on my chat list. Did I miss some, Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji. All the questions were attended, and yes, there's another question from Manu Prabhu now.
Okay, let's see. Thank you for association. Thank you for your association. I'm sorry, I didn't do much give much of an example of hearing during this lecture because it's only me talking. So forgive me for violating the very thing I'm trying to teach her, but hearing is so much important. So here's a question. How do we qualify to hear the voice of a spiritual master from within, parentheses, Supersoul, and how do we know that this is our Guru Maharaj or our own mind? Okay, I'm going to answer this in a very practical way. As a disciple of Srila Prabhupada since 1976, I by no means walk around waiting to hear Prabhupada's instructions in my heart what to do. I'm very much focused on hearing class from Srila Prabhupada and from other Vaishnava followers of Srila Prabhupada, hearing from Prabhupada's, hearing from the Shastra directly and from Prabhupada's purports, from Prabhupada's insights, all the different sources like that. And then based on that, understanding what needs to be done. Prabhupada talks about here in this purport I read today about how Krishna gives us shelter through the Bhagavatam, and therefore we have to take shelter of that. So there's the instruction. You know, it doesn't have to come from within. It comes from within and without. And as we get more and more purified, we will be able to hear more direct instructions from within. But at our stage of development, we get the impetus from the Supersoul to seek Guru. But the Guru is the external manifestation of the Supersoul. Why? Because we can't hear the Supersoul. We can't hear God in the heart. We can't hear Guru in the heart. We're not so qualified for that yet. So they send us as messages from outside. So then we have to dive deeply into taking advice and guidance and shelter of the instructions that are given as they sent through the Vaishnavas, through the Shastra, through the Guru, through the founder Acharya. And in this way we understand. And at the same time, you know, sometimes we get a little intuition, or we get some sense of something that should be done or should not be done. We should never minimize that. But the last part of this question, how do we know it's not our mind? Well, we know it's our mind if it contradicts what we read in Bhagavatam yesterday. So if I read something in Bhagavatam, but then I think I'm hearing, Krishna or my Guru speaking to me from within. Well, if it's not directly in support of what we learned from Bhagavatam, from Bhagavad Gita, that's a pretty good warning that this is just our mind speaking to us. Bhagavatam and Gita say we should become humble servants of everyone. And my mind tells me, oh, she's not very sincere. I'm much more advanced than she is. Well, that's a problem. Or Krishna says, Prabhupada says specifically, work in cooperation with ISKCON. But, we think we hear a voice that says, oh, you're so advanced, you need to work with these people. Excuse me, my dear mind, to use a nice American expression, shut up. Don't be saying these nonsense things, because that's not Krishna consciousness. And I'll just add this: when we are not clear, that's why we have Vaishnava association, and we should feel free, we should feel open, and we should cultivate relationships with some senior devotees or mentors or peers who we can open our minds to, respected peers who we can open our minds to, and seek their advice and seek their shelter. Very, very important. Krishna consciousness is like a fabric. It's not like one line. Like we're out walking today, and I'm in a state called Maine. They have like these little worms that hang by this one thin line, and they're just kind of hanging in space. That's not our process. It's not it's a tapestry. We've got the founder Charya. We have Diksha Guru. We have Siksha Guru. We have the Shastra, we have the holy name, we have the deities, we have Prasadam, we have the 9 processes of bhakti. It's this network, protecting us and giving us shelter. So take shelter of all of those different aspects, and your vision will become more clear, and understanding will become more clear. Okay, so let's see. How to improve the hearing process, as when I hear one lecture, I forget some things about the previous lecture. I'm finding this difficult. Yes, myself too. Memory is not, I know even as a young person, I like to sing, but there was no way I was going to be in any kind of, musicals at school, because I was petrified I'd forget the lines. And you see these people like professional actors or actresses, and they learn these long lines and these long songs, and you wonder, how do they possibly do that? I don't have that kind of memory. I've got a real Kali Yuga short-term memory. But there's so don't feel that's necessarily in itself a disqualification. But we can learn things. We learn by repetition. I mentioned earlier, I read Lilamrita again, probably 10th time. Volume 1, I just finished it and went right back to the beginning and read volume 1 again. And I remembered things. And by hearing it again, I remember more things. So that's one, repetition. A second, very, very important thing, when you learn something, tell it. It said the best way to actually learn something is to teach it to others. So if you read something, Prabhu, you read something new in Bhagavad Gita in a purport, or you hear a lecture, and then go share it with the God brother, or a family member or a neighbor or something, you know, but I just read today, or do you know what Prabhu just said today, or I heard Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj saying a lecture today. Share it, and that way it reinforces the memory yourself. And so those, I think those are the two most important things. And of course, prayer is always there. Krishna, please help me. I'm trying to learn these things, and I need your help. So repetition, tell it to somebody else, and prayer. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's some things I'm not expert on. I'm not expert on anything, but in these areas particularly not. Can we worship the deity at home without second initiation? There's, I kind of have to send you to the deity minister on this, because we have a ministry of deity worship, and they're clarifying the standards. My understanding is that we all should have some, and Prabhupada wrote many places, we all should have some standard of deity worship at home. It could be a picture of Prabhupada and Guru and Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, and we offer our food in that way. I know in my home, we're very, very busy, and we have deities, but we don't have a high standard of worship with them, because I frankly just don't have time to do that. I have never been able to have such time management. Other people, it's a more critical part of their day, and they really, really focus on it, and they have more time. So I think home worship is something that has to be according to one's individual capacity. And for specific guidelines and rules, I would seriously just direct you to Nishinga Kavacha Prabhu, who's the global deity minister, or there are deity ministers in different parts of the world in different areas, and they can give more guidance. But if one doesn't have second initiation, you still should have. You can have pictures of Krishna at home, or you can have a little murti of Krishna. You can offer your food like that, and that's different than actually formal worship at home. So it's not my area expertise. So I'll have to let that go back to the deity minister, and I'd be curious to find out his answers as well. Let's see. Who did I miss? Any other questions?
No, Prabhu. She also mentioned over there that
Okay.
she's been like worshipping the deities even before, from the time she was not initiated, like before first initiation she is already worshipping.
Mhm.
So like her questions are in parts, like she is worshipping the deities from the before the first initiation. Say after first initiation also she is worshipping, and she wanted to know that there are some rules and all these things.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding from what I've learned from Prabhupada's writings and from Nishinga Kavacha is there's a big difference between deities at home and deities in the temple. Deities in the temple, they're being, formally installed. We're making very serious commitment to maintain worship at a high level as a community, with the understanding that so many people are going to come together and contribute to that worship, and providing nice, boga offerings for the Lord, and donating boga for the worship of the Lord, and bringing flowers to the worship of the Lord. It's a community thing. Whereas in our home, it's a much different understanding. It's that I am a householder. As I'm understanding you say home, I'm a householder. I have this house that's in my name, at least the government. I know I don't own it. I know it's Krishna's, but the government says I own it. That's what's recorded. In America, they say at the courthouse, or whatever the agency is in your particular country. You officially are the owner, but actually Krishna's the owner. So we have a deity of the Lord in our house, because we know he's actually the proprietor of this place. And we offer the food to him first, because he's the enjoyer. We're not the enjoyer. And we want to revere him, and to welcome him into our home on a daily basis. The details of how much elaborate that is can vary tremendously in one's home. And I think that the rules, so to speak, are much, much different at home. And I know that Prabhupada also cautioned us, we should be very, very careful, especially those of us that live physically near an established temple. Whatever we're doing at home in veneration of the Lord should not minimize our ability to visit the temple, or serve at the temple, or contribute to the temple. because we are very, very much a missionary movement. Our process is ultimately based on the individual awakening love of God. And at the same time, simultaneously, the individual, each of us knows the best way to please God is to try to share this with others. That's what love's all about. I accept love and I give love. I'm getting the mercy of Krishna's love and Guru's love, and I want to share that with others. So that's an important point too. We should be careful that our veneration of the Lord in our home should enhance and help deepen our personal devotion and also our commitment to the larger community. So we have to be careful that doesn't become an obstacle, because sometimes it's happened that it becomes, in some ways, obstacle maybe is not the right word, but it may become a reason for us to be less connected with the community. And our whole organization, our whole movement is based on Sankirtan. It's a community, it's a congregation. We need each other. And if we're kind of like at home doing our own worship of Krishna, that's beautiful. But more important is to come together to worship Krishna. So we have to make sure those two things don't come in conflict with each other. Okay. So Prabhu, we exhausted the questions?
Yes, Prabhuji. That was the last question we had.
Okay.
So we thank you from our, we thank you for giving your time from our heart. Just as a summary of the class, like you started with sharing the Srimad Bhagavatam verse where Krishna is finishing his pastime and go leaving this planet and going back to Goloka, and how what was the situation of the devotees of Krishna. And then you also same thing compared with the thing, like how Srila Prabhupada left and how the devotees were feeling at that time. So similarly, that feeling we can feel right now when our spiritual master is going to the next journey of his service to Srila Prabhupada. And then you also shared some of the interaction with our Guru Maharaj, and how you explained very nicely that how we can connect more to him by hearing. We can connect to him fully, basically, by hearing more and more, and we can make that relationship more deep. Yes, it's a time of grieving and it's a time of growing. This was the one part you explained very nicely. And then you also explained that how Bhakti Charu Maharaj was establishing and explaining the position of Srila Prabhupada as a founder Acharya in ISKCON. So these were the points, and you also answered many of the questions which are very important for us to understand that how Krishna empowered Srila Vyasdev to write about the scriptures, and then Srila Prabhupada was empowering his disciples to follow his instruction and continue the ISKCON movement as his legacy. And then you explained about the Vani and Bapu. All these were like really nice encouragements and empowerment to all of us. And we are very much thankful to you. We had your association in Ujjain during the GBC midterm meet. And it was nice. Many devotees were happy to serve you, those who were serving you during that time, and also those who had your association. So we request Prabhuji, whenever this pandemic is over and time permits to you, please visit Ujjain again to engage us in your service and give your association again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and we launched, I think, both the disciple course and the Guru seminar. I think both in Ujjain, and we had the first ISKCON Guru retreat in Ujjain also. So yeah, it's a beautiful temple, and it's a place that I'm always very, very fortunate. I've been there several times. It's a very beautiful community. Pro, just add one little thing when you said that the importance of hearing, and just to emphasize this again, hearing. If we really hear, just like if someone says, "Don't touch the fire," and then we touch the fire. Wait, didn't you hear me? No, I heard you. Well, no, you didn't hear me, because I said, "Don't touch the fire," and now you touched the fire and you got burnt. Or conversely, put your hand under the water after touching the fire. Did you hear me? Yeah, I heard you. Well, then why aren't you putting your hand under the water to take the pain away? So in a similar way, just the little emphasis, and I'm really impressed by your note-taking abilities there. You summed up everything very nicely. Just to remember, hearing is good. It's all based on hearing, and part of hearing, you know, there's hearing. When we've heard, then we chant. When we've heard, then we serve. You know, Prabhupada says cooperate together. It's not just repeating, and Prabhupada said cooperate together. We have to cooperate together. You know, Krishna told Arjuna, okay, you fight. Did you hear me? Yes, I did, Lord. I'm going to sit down here now because I heard you. No, no, no. Did you hear me say you should fight? Yes, I heard you say I should fight. Well, why are you sitting there? Well, because I heard you say. It's like, if we heard he said fight, we have to go fight, right? If we heard he said cooperate, we have to cooperate. If he heard he said, you know, we should work to try to help others, we have to do that. So, and of course, at our own pace. You know, they talk we should be like in the stretch zone, not the panic zone. You know, Prabhupada talked about you should try to distribute books. It doesn't mean we can all go out and be the first class book distributors, but we can at least assist in some way. Prabhupada, you know, so many examples that according to our capacity, we should try to grow and take on a little more responsibility every day and try to help share the message and help others. So thank you again, Prabhupada. I really appreciate being here with everyone. And
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
I pray that each and every devotee here who listening to this message and those that are not with us can also themselves keep the presence and the love and the instructions of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj in your hearts, and that you all actually, as I'm trying to, can see his instructions as guiding lights, how to continue on in our service to Krishna for the rest of our lives, and that each and every devotee on this call now can be empowered by Guru's mercy and Prabhupada's mercy to share Lord Chaitanya's mercy as best as we can to the fullest capacity we have through today and throughout our lives. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. We express our gratitude by chanting one Hare Krishna mantra all together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Anuttama Prabhu, His Grace Anuttama Prabhu ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila
Vaishnav Sangha
Prabhupada
ki
ki
jai.
Huh?
Vaishnav Sangha ki jai. All of you ki jai. Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Hari Bo. Thank you.